There's no school anymore. The words struck Evelyn Mercer harder than the cold Wyoming wind. She stood in the middle of Red Willow's main street with one gloved hand still wrapped around the handle of her traveling case. Behind her, the stagecoach that had carried her 3 days across the territory was already rolling away in a brown cloud of dust. Ahead of her, the chairman of the school committee shifted uncomfortably beneath the brim of his hat. Evelyn looked past him toward the blackened timbers on the edge of town. That was the schoolhouse? Burned in March, the chairman admitted. Chimney fire. Wind caught it before anybody could save much. You hired me in May. Well, the letter had already gone east by then. We sent another. I never received it. The man looked genuinely sorry, which somehow made the situation worse. The $24 in Evelyn's purse had been intended to last until her first salary payment. Her trunk contained 4 dresses, 2 pairs of shoes, a collection of teaching books, and everything else she owned in the world. She had no family waiting back in Illinois, no husband, no inheritance, no home to return to. For 6 years she had worked toward becoming a certified teacher because knowledge was the one possession no fire, creditor, or careless relative could take away from her. Now she had traveled nearly 1,000 miles for a position that no longer existed. The chairman cleared his throat. The committee hopes to rebuild next spring. Next spring? Town treasury is thin. Winter comes early here. Evelyn glanced toward the western sky. Clouds had gathered over the mountains, their lower edges dark with the promise of snow. And what am I supposed to do until then? The chairman had no answer. Someone behind her did. Teach. Evelyn turned. A tall man stood beside a wagon loaded with fresh-cut lumber. He looked to be somewhere in his middle 30s, broad through the shoulders, with sleeves rolled over strong forearms despite the cold. His brown coat had sawdust clinging to one cuff. A little girl sat silently on the wagon seat beside him, watching Evelyn with grave gray eyes. The stranger nodded toward the burned schoolhouse. You don't need that building to teach. The chairman frowned. Caleb, we've been through this. The man ignored him. Evelyn studied the stranger. And where, exactly, would I put 20 children? His gaze moved across the street to a long, weathered building with shuttered windows and a crooked sign that still read Hart Freight Company. My brother left me a building nobody uses, he said. Seems you've got a use and I've got a building. For the first time since she had stepped off the stage, Evelyn almost smiled. Is it fit for children? No, her smile disappeared. But it could be. That was how Evelyn Mercer came to Red Willow. Not because the town had kept its promise, because a carpenter with a silent daughter had offered her 4 walls and a possibility. The old freight office smelled of dust, mouse nests, and 20 years of neglect. Caleb Hart unlocked it the following morning. Sunlight entered through gaps in the shutters, illuminating abandoned crates, coils of rope, a broken harness, and a cast-iron stove rusted nearly through at the bottom. Evelyn stood in the doorway beside Mrs. Bell, the widowed dressmaker who had agreed to rent her a room for 50 cents a week. This, Mrs. Bell announced, is a disaster. Caleb leaned one shoulder against the doorframe. I said it could become a school. I didn't say it was one. The little girl from the wagon stood behind him. She had not spoken since Evelyn arrived. This your daughter? Evelyn asked. Caleb's face changed almost imperceptibly. My daughter, Nora. The child was 8, perhaps 9. Her dark hair had been braided neatly, though one side was already coming loose. Evelyn crouched, so they were nearly eye to eye. I'm Miss Mercer. Nora studied her. I hear I may be teaching here. Nothing. Do you like books? Nora glanced at her father. Caleb answered quietly. She used to. Evelyn did not ask what had changed. She had learned that people often revealed their wounds more honestly when no one pressed a finger against them. Instead, she stood and surveyed the room again. We need windows that open. I can fix them. A stove that won't burn the building down. I can replace it. Desks. I can build those. A blackboard. Caleb frowned thoughtfully. I can make the frame. Slate will have to come up from Cheyenne. We can paint boards black until then. He looked at her. That works? It will if I say it does. Something close to amusement moved across his face. Mrs. Bell gave a satisfied nod. Well, I suppose that settles it. It did not settle everything. The school committee still had no money to pay Evelyn before spring. That afternoon, 6 parents gathered in Mrs. Bell's parlor. Evelyn explained her proposal. She would teach for 8 weeks. No guaranteed salary. Each family could contribute what it reasonably could: eggs, flour, coal, lamp oil, vegetables, sewing, or labor. If, after 8 weeks, the arrangement proved impossible, Evelyn would leave Red Willow before the worst of winter. A cattleman offered beef. The baker promised bread twice a week. A mother with 4 children said she could wash and mend Evelyn's clothes. The blacksmith promised to repair the stove. Caleb Hart said nothing until everyone else had finished. Then he said, "I'll make the building usable." "How much?" Evelyn asked. He looked mildly offended. "You're teaching my daughter. That does not answer my question. No charge. I cannot accept charity. It isn't charity." "What is it?" Caleb looked toward Nora, who sat in the corner staring at a closed book in her lap. "An investment." Evelyn followed his gaze. She understood. "Then I accept." For the next 12 days, the old freight office became the busiest building in Red Willow. Men hauled out rotten crates. Women scrubbed walls. Teenage boys scraped years of grime from the windows. Caleb replaced floorboards and built rows of narrow benches. Evelyn washed the old freight counter and transformed it into her teacher's desk. Behind a collapsed section of the burned schoolhouse, one of the children found something half buried in ash. It was the old school bell. The iron bracket had warped in the fire, and the brass was black. One side had cracked. A boy carried it to Evelyn as if he had discovered buried treasure. "Can we still ring it?" She turned the bell over in her hands. No sound came from it. "I don't think so." Caleb, standing on a ladder nearby, looked down. "Let me see it." She handed it to him. He examined the crack. "It won't sound the same." "That wasn't my question." His eyes met hers. "No," he said. "It probably won't." The children looked disappointed. Caleb ran his thumb across the damaged brass. But different isn't always useless. He took the bell back to his workshop. 3 days later, it hung above the door of the new schoolroom. The crack was still visible. The blackened brass had been polished until it shone everywhere except along the scar left by the fire. When Evelyn pulled the rope on the first morning of classes, the bell did not produce the clear, high note it once had. Its voice was deeper now, rougher, but it carried all the way down Red Willow's main street. 23 children came running. Nora Hart walked more slowly than the others. She chose the last bench. For the first week, she never raised her hand. For the second, she never spoke unless Evelyn asked her a direct question. By the third, Evelyn discovered the child's secret. Nora was not a poor student. She was an exceptional one. She could solve arithmetic problems faster than children 2 years older. She remembered nearly every word she read. When Evelyn introduced geography, Nora copied the map of the United States with such precision that even the territorial borders were nearly correct. But whenever another child praised her, she withdrew. Whenever someone asked about her mother, she became completely silent. Caleb never volunteered an explanation. Evelyn never demanded one. Instead, she left a book on Nora's desk one afternoon. It contained stories about women explorers. Nora stared at it. For me, it was the first time Evelyn had heard her voice. "Yes." Nora touched the cover. "Why?" "Because I think you're curious about the world." The little girl hesitated. "My papa says the world is mostly weather and bad roads." Evelyn laughed before she could stop herself. At the doorway, Caleb froze. It was not Evelyn's laughter that startled him. It was Nora's, small, brief, almost rusty from lack of use, but unmistakable. His daughter laughed. Caleb turned away before either of them saw what crossed his face. That evening, Evelyn found a wooden box beside her school desk. Inside were 24 sticks of chalk, real chalk, shipped from Cheyenne. There was no note. She knew who had left it. The next morning, she walked to Caleb's workshop. He was fitting a wheel rim when she entered. You bought chalk. He kept working. Children need chalk. You charged me nothing for the building. They need a building. You built the desks. They need somewhere to sit. You repaired the bell. They need to know when school starts. Evelyn folded her arms. Do you answer every expression of gratitude by explaining why it wasn't necessary? He finally looked up. Usually. Well, thank you anyway. He nodded once. She began to leave. Miss Mercer. She turned. Caleb appeared suddenly uncertain, which did not seem natural on a man who handled horses, wagons, and splintered timber without hesitation. Nora talked about you at supper. Evelyn waited. For almost an hour. That sounds exhausting. A smile touched his mouth. It was. She smiled back. Then she walked out. For the first time in nearly 3 years, Caleb stood alone in his workshop and realized the silence bothered him. His wife, Rebecca, had died of pneumonia during a February storm. Nora had been 5. Before Rebecca's death, the house behind Caleb's workshop had been filled with music. His wife sang badly and often. Nora had talked endlessly. Caleb, who had always preferred quiet, used to pretend their noise distracted him. After the funeral, he learned that there were kinds of silence a man would give everything to escape. He had done his best with Nora. He cooked badly, braided hair worse, worked too many hours, loved his daughter so fiercely that he sometimes frightened himself with it. But there were doors grief had closed inside the child that he did not know how to open. Then a young woman arrived on a stagecoach with intelligent blue eyes, a straight spine, and nowhere sensible to go. Within a month, Nora was laughing twice a week. By November, she was laughing almost every day. Evelyn changed too. At first, Red Willow had been only a place where she had been stranded. Then it became a place where people expected her. Mrs. Bell kept a lamp burning when Evelyn taught late. The baker saved the softest rolls for her. The children began leaving wildflowers and crooked drawings on her desk. Parents stopped saying the old freight office. They called it the school. Caleb still arrived before sunrise on the coldest mornings to light the stove. He believed Evelyn did not know. She always knew. One morning she arrived early enough to catch him kneeling beside the stove. So, she said from the doorway, the fire starts itself? Caleb looked over his shoulder. Apparently. And the wood carries itself inside? Red Willow is a remarkable place. I'm beginning to notice. She removed her gloves. You do realize I am capable of building a fire? I'm sure you are. Then why do you keep doing it? He closed the iron door and stood. For a moment, he seemed to consider inventing an excuse. Instead, he told the truth. Because your hands get cold. The simplicity of the answer unsettled her more than any compliment could have. She looked away. Caleb picked up his coat. Neither spoke as he passed. That evening, Evelyn found herself remembering the sentence, not because it was romantic, because it was observant. Most of her life, people had noticed what she could do for them. Her aunt had noticed she could keep a house. The academy had noticed she could teach. The school committee had noticed she could solve their problem. Caleb Hart had noticed her hands were cold. Winter settled over Red Willow with brutal speed. Snow covered the road to Cheyenne. Cattle huddled behind windbreaks. The school continued. Evelyn taught multiplication beside a stove that glowed red. She taught history while snow pressed against the windows. She taught 12 children to read better, 4 to read at all, and Nora Hart to stop apologizing every time she knew the answer. Caleb began spending his noon meal at the school. At first, he claimed he was checking the stove, then the windows, then the hinges. Eventually, Evelyn stopped asking what he was repairing. They both knew. One afternoon, she found him studying a set of wagon plans at the back table. Something wrong? New freight wagon. He tapped the drawing. I keep breaking rear axles on the mountain grade. Evelyn leaned over the paper. She studied the measurements. You're carrying too much weight behind the center. He looked at her. I've been building wagons for 15 years, and I've been teaching geometry for 5. That's supposed to impress me? No, this is. She took his pencil. Within minutes, she had redrawn the load position and adjusted the distance between the rear axle and the cargo bed. Caleb stared at the figures, then at her. "You think that will work? I know it will reduce the stress." "How?" she explained. He did not understand every mathematical term. He understood confidence when he heard it. 2 weeks later, he built the wagon according to her measurements. It crossed the mountain grade with a heavier load than any he had sent before. The axle held. That evening, he entered the school after the children had gone. Evelyn was cleaning the blackboard. He placed a small object on her desk. It was a wooden ruler, smooth walnut, perfectly straight. Her name had been carved into one edge, E. Mercer. She lifted it. "What is this?" "Payment for engineering services. You owe me substantially more." "I was afraid of that." She ran her fingers over the carved letters. "You made it. I make things. I've noticed." He watched her smile. There were moments when Caleb forgot to breathe around her. This was one of them. Evelyn looked up and caught something in his expression. Neither moved. Then the school bell outside shifted in the wind and gave one low, accidental note. The moment broke. Caleb cleared his throat. "Nora will be waiting." "Yes." He left. Evelyn remained beside her desk for a long time, holding the ruler. She had spent years believing love, if it ever came, would announce itself clearly. She was beginning to suspect it might arrive disguised as firewood, chalk, repaired hinges, and a piece of walnut carved by careful hands. The telegram arrived in January. "Mrs. Bell brought it to the school herself. You'd better read this privately." Evelyn saw the official seal. Territorial Department of Education. Her heart quickened. The message was short. A position had opened at the new academy in Cheyenne. Permanent appointment, $45 a month. Private lodging included. A proper classroom. A library. A salary more than twice what Red Willow could promise, even after spring. The superintendent had heard about the mistake that sent her to a town without a school and wished to correct it. Evelyn read the telegram 3 times. This was what she had wanted. Security. Recognition. A future that did not depend on donated eggs and the willingness of parents to keep sending children through snow. She should have been thrilled. Instead, she looked through the window. Nora was outside trying to catch snowflakes on her tongue. Caleb was across the street repairing a wagon wheel. As if he sensed her gaze, he looked up. Even from that distance, she knew the moment he saw the paper in her hand. She folded it quickly. Too late. She had until February 1st to answer. For 6 days, she told no one. Not because she intended deception, because speaking the choice aloud would make it real. Then Nora found the telegram. The girl had been searching Evelyn's desk for a missing geography paper. She did not read every word, only enough. Cheyenne. Appointment. February. Nora went pale. When Evelyn returned from helping a younger student, the child was gone. Caleb learned the truth that evening. He arrived at Mrs. Bell's house after dark. Evelyn opened the door. "Nora told you." "Yes." His face revealed nothing. "She shouldn't have read it." "She's a child." "I was going to tell you." "When?" "I don't know." "Before you left?" The words were sharper than he intended. Evelyn stiffened. "I have not decided to leave." "But you might." "Yes." Caleb looked away. Every instinct in him wanted to tell her not to go. Every selfish part of him wanted to describe Nora's transformation. The school, the town, the way his own house felt when Evelyn occasionally joined them for Sunday supper. But he had loved one woman once. He knew what love was not. It was not a locked door. It was not a debt. It was not saying, "I helped you, therefore you must stay." So he forced his voice to remain calm. "Cheyenne's a good opportunity." Evelyn felt an unexpected ache. "That is what everyone keeps saying. You'd have a real salary." "Yes." "A proper school." "Yes." "A library." "Yes." "Caleb." He nodded. "Then you should take it." The words hurt them both. Evelyn's chin lifted. "I see." He wanted to call them back. He did not. "Good night, Miss Mercer." "Good night, Mr. Hart." He walked into the snow. Evelyn closed the door and stood in the dark hall with tears burning behind her eyes. She was angry at him, then angrier at herself for wanting him to give her a reason to stay. The next morning, Caleb did not light the school stove. Evelyn did it herself. Her hands were cold. 3 days passed. They spoke only when necessary. Nora blamed herself and became quiet again. The schoolroom, once so warm despite winter, seemed to shrink around all the things no one would say. On the 4th afternoon, Nora remained after the other children left. Evelyn was stacking books. "You're going." Evelyn turned. "I haven't decided." "You want to." "I want many things." Nora looked down. "My mama wanted to go east once." Evelyn said nothing. "Papa told me." The girl rubbed one boot against the floor. "She wanted to visit Boston. He kept saving money." Then she got sick before they could go. Evelyn sat beside her. "What are you trying to tell me?" Nora looked at her with tears in her gray eyes. "I don't want you to stay because of me." The words were so unexpected that Evelyn could not answer. Nora swallowed. "I want you to stay. But I don't want you to hate us someday." Evelyn's heart broke a little. "Oh, sweetheart." She pulled the child close. Nora held herself stiffly for 1 second. Then she wrapped both arms around Evelyn. Across town, Caleb sat alone in his workshop. On his bench lay the official papers the school committee had finally approved that morning. Red Willow had secured a territorial grant. The town could hire a permanent teacher. They could pay Evelyn $32 a month beginning in March. Not 45. No library. No private lodging. But real wages. A real position. A future. Caleb should have been pleased. Instead, he stared at the papers and understood that he could not place them in Evelyn's hands as though they were chains. If she stayed, it had to be because she chose Red Willow, not because Red Willow made leaving impossible. The following morning, Evelyn entered his workshop. He looked up. She placed the telegram from Cheyenne on his bench. "I'm answering today." His chest tightened. "All right. I wanted you to know first." "Thank you." She waited. He said nothing else. Evelyn almost laughed from frustration. "You are the most infuriating man I have ever met." "That seems unfair." "Unfair? I haven't said anything." "Exactly." He stared at her. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth." Caleb's jaw tightened. The workshop seemed suddenly too small. "The truth?" "Yes. The truth is that I want you to stay." Evelyn stopped breathing. "The truth is, I wanted you to stay before that telegram came. I wanted you here before I had any right to want it." He stepped away from the workbench. "I notice what time you cross the street in the morning. I notice when your lamp is still burning at Mrs. Bell's. I notice when you laugh before you remember to be proper." Her eyes filled. He continued before courage abandoned him. "I know what my daughter was before you came here, and I know what she is now. But this is not about Nora." He took another step. "It is not about the school. It is not about what this town needs." His voice lowered. "It is about me." Evelyn had never seen him look afraid. Now he did. "I love you." The words were plain. No poetry. No promises of an easy life. Only truth. Caleb drew a slow breath. "But I will not ask you to give up something you want because I am afraid of losing you." Evelyn looked down at the telegram. "That is why you told me to go." "Yes. You thought that was noble?" "I hoped." "It was miserable." "I know that now." Despite herself, she laughed. Caleb almost smiled. Evelyn looked at the man she had come to love. Then she looked around the workshop, at the tools, the wagons, the ordinary things that had somehow become part of the landscape of her heart. "I have spent my entire life going where I was needed," she said. "Do you know that?" He listened. "My aunt needed help after my parents died. The academy needed instructors. Red Willow needed a teacher." She touched the telegram. "Cheyenne needs one too." She looked directly at him. "For once, I would like to decide where I want to be." Caleb's expression softened. "And where is that?" "I haven't answered yet." Hope vanished from his face almost comically. Evelyn smiled. But I know. She left him standing there. The telegraph operator sent her answer at 11:17 that morning. She thanked the superintendent. She declined the position. Then she walked directly to the school committee and negotiated. She did not stay for free. She did not stay because a man loved her. She did not stay because a child needed her. Evelyn Mercer stayed because she had built something in Red Willow that belonged partly to her, and because for the first time in her life, she was choosing a future instead of merely surviving one. She demanded $35 a month. The committee offered $32. She demanded coal for the school. They agreed. She demanded money for books. They protested. She threatened to reconsider Cheyenne. They found the money. By supper, Red Willow had its first permanently appointed teacher. That evening, Caleb came to the school. Evelyn was alone. The damaged bell hung above the door. He stopped beneath it. I heard. News travels fast. This is Red Willow. She nodded. I suppose it does. He stepped inside. You stayed. I did. For the school? For myself. He smiled slowly. It was the answer he had needed. Then Evelyn crossed the room and kissed him. Caleb stood perfectly still in shock. When she stepped back, his eyes widened. I thought, he began, there were rules about courtship. There are. What was that? A special lesson. He laughed. It was the first time she had ever heard him laugh without restraint. By spring, the old freight building had been painted white. Parents planted cottonwoods along the road. Caleb built a second classroom. Evelyn ordered books from Chicago. Nora became the first student in Red Willow to read every volume they owned. Caleb and Evelyn courted for 8 months. Their courtship consisted of Sunday walks, shared suppers, arguments about books, wagon designs Evelyn insisted she had improved, and long evenings on Mrs. Bell's porch where Caleb slowly learned that silence could be shared without being lonely. He proposed in October, not in the school, not beneath the bell. He asked her beside the half-built addition to his house. There were fresh boards stacked nearby and sawdust on his boots. What is that room? Evelyn asked. Caleb looked suddenly nervous. I thought it might be a study. For whom? You. She looked at him. That seems presumptuous. I haven't built the door yet, so I can still escape, if necessary. She smiled. He reached into his coat, then stopped. I had a speech. That sounds dangerous. I forgot it. That sounds more like you. He took her hand. I know you don't need a place to go anymore. Her teasing expression faded. I know you can make a life anywhere. He looked toward the house where Nora was watching shamelessly through the kitchen window. But if you would choose this one, with us, I would spend the rest of mine being grateful. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. She squeezed his hand. Yes. Behind the kitchen window, Nora shouted so loudly they heard every word. She said yes. They were married before Christmas. 6 years later, the morning bell rang across Red Willow. Its voice was still imperfect. The crack remained. Caleb had offered more than once to replace it with a new bell. Evelyn always refused. The old one had survived the fire. Its sound was not what it had been. Neither was hers. She liked it that way. The town had changed. The original classroom now held the younger children. A second room had been built for older students. There was a small library with 183 books, though Nora insisted on counting whenever new shipments arrived. At 14, she had already announced that she intended to attend a teacher's college. Caleb pretended this information did not terrify him. Evelyn knew better. Their 5-year-old son raced across the schoolyard every morning as though being late were a family tradition. Their younger daughter preferred sitting beneath Evelyn's desk and drawing on any paper careless enough to fall within reach. Mrs. Bell still complained about everything. The baker still sent warm bread. The school committee had learned, after several painful negotiations, never to underestimate their teacher. One autumn afternoon, Evelyn stood outside the school while children poured through the doors. Caleb approached from the workshop carrying a repaired chair. You know, he said, I once thought that building was useless. You were wrong. I often am. Not often enough. He set the chair down. Across the yard, Nora pulled the bell rope. Its deep, rough note rolled over the street. Caleb watched the children gather. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the old school hadn't burned? Evelyn considered the question. She might have arrived, taught in the original building, collected her salary, and eventually moved somewhere else. She might never have needed Caleb's feed office. He might never have built her desks. Nora might never have opened the book about women explorers. There would have been no cold mornings when Caleb lit the stove before dawn. No walnut ruler. No argument over Cheyenne. No unfinished room built for a woman who no longer needed rescuing. Yes, she said. And I think some things have to end before we realize we are allowed to build something better. Caleb looked at the scarred bell. Then at his wife. The first day she came to Red Willow, Evelyn Mercer believed she had lost her future. She had been wrong. What she lost was a plan. Her future was waiting in a ruined freight building, in a classroom that did not yet exist, in the laughter of a grieving child, and in the quiet devotion of a man who understood that love did not mean giving someone a place they could never leave. It meant giving them every reason to stay and letting them choose. Caleb took her hand. The schoolyard was full of voices. Behind them stood the building no one had needed. Ahead of them, their children were arguing about who would ring the bell tomorrow. And as its imperfect note faded into the wide western sky, Evelyn understood that home was not the place a desperate person was forced to accept. It was the place she could have left, and chose, freely and gladly, to make her own. Sometimes the future we planned has to fall apart before we can recognize the life that truly fits us. Evelyn found strength not by clinging to what was lost, but by using her gifts, accepting sincere kindness, and choosing where she wanted to belong. When we give others room to grow and freedom to choose, love becomes something warmer than rescue. It becomes home. A small note for you. This story was created and fictionalized by AI for your entertainment, while also sharing a positive lesson about kindness, resilience, love, and choosing the life that feels true.